What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the crew 2, and in this video I'm going to be taking another look at the drift vehicles here because I wanted to see how the score breaker set really is on these cars. So I actually do have a set on the vehicle here that I did have a while ago. Now I really have not used the score breaker set on the drift vehicles, so what's funny is a while back I really thought the score breaker on the drift cars is what you're going to want to use on a lot of the summits and or pretty much any drift event for that matter. And well, it turns out the score breaker does absolutely nothing on the drift cars, which I'm sure many players already know this. But I would say the Nitro Chemist set is probably going to be your best bet. Now the main reason for this is I know a lot of players never use their nitrous, including myself, but at least you will have that extra boost of power if you really do need it. Now having a score breaker set, unless you guys have that special part set from that summit a long time ago where you have the extra percentages on slippery and hothead, then it will definitely be worth it. But besides that, there's really no point of using Scorebreaker. So I decided to try out the Scorebreaker set once again on the drift class, but this time I decided to modify one of my older sets and put skilled on them to really see if these cars could actually be used on like slaloms and stuff like that, which I know no players are going to actually use these on those. But I was wondering, could these cars actually be used on a slalom if you really wanted to, or to just mess around? And well, to be honest, the car really isn't all that bad. The biggest thing about them is obviously these things slide all over the place, but I did still manage to beat a couple of these without having any issues. Now, for me, I did have to raise up the tire grip all the way on the Aventador. I also raised up the ARBs a little bit there as well, which seemed to make the car do just fine. Now, I'm sure no one's going to actually try to use these vehicles on slaloms because there's really no reason to. Because it seems many of the other classes can also do many of these slaloms, I ended up testing out the hypercar with a score breaker. I also ended up trying out the rallycross vehicles as well, and all of them seem to do really good on most of these slaloms, even the off-road ones. Now, one thing I did notice about the drift class, though, is the fact that these vehicles do struggle a bit with getting their speed up and actually keeping their cars in a straight line, not sliding all over the place. And obviously these slaloms have the checkpoints kind of all over the place, and you'll be finding yourself drifting a lot more than you should be, which will definitely make it so you really cannot complete many of these slaloms at all. Now, running one of the drift cars on the slalom is probably not going to be the greatest option there, even though we have pretty much every other class now that can basically do them as well. I would say it's going to be more of a fun factor and kind of mix up the gameplay a bit if you guys are trying to mess around. But I'm really thinking about trying out some of the odd classes in future summits, like the drift vehicles or running like a hypercar and an off-road slalom. I think this will really mix things up, but also really compare the other classes to like the rally raid vehicles with that crazy set that they do have, just to see how these vehicles might compare to those. So the first slalom I wanted to show you guys with the drift vehicle is going to be the one located at the Little Eagle racetrack here. Now the reason why I wanted to do this one is because I did notice the drift cars struggle slightly on some of them, which actually the one in Miami I couldn't even complete that one. But the Aventador seemed to do really good compared to a lot of the other drift cars I did test out. Now I did end up using the RX-7. Wasn't really digging that car all that much, and I decided to jump into the Aventador and turn up the tire grip as I mentioned earlier, and this car is definitely doing a lot better than I thought it was going to do. Now, we did actually have a really weird event a long time ago in a summit where you had to race a drift car on a racetrack, and I personally found that to be pretty fun, which how some of these events have been going recently. We'll probably end up seeing that again in the future. Now, if you guys really did want to use these cars on these to mess around, all you really have to do is aim for the pins kind of in the middle just like this. If you do that, it'll basically speed this up a little bit instead of going around each one. I noticed trying to slide around each one, you're probably going to lose way too much time and end up not actually beating this. And luckily the Aventador doesn't really seem to struggle. It really does make me laugh a lot, the fact that you can use pretty much any vehicle class on most of the skills here, because that crazy set on the rally raid vehicles doesn't really seem to make much of a difference, which I think is great, because now you can basically use any other class on many of these slaloms and still get a really good score, which I think is going to mix up the summits in a really good way. So for the last slalom, I decided to do the one at Giants Racetrack because I did find this one to be really fun to do. Now, I did previously mention that the one in Miami was kind of hard to complete. I noticed even if you guys do not complete them, you can still get a pretty decent score. So if you really wanted to, you could probably run a drift car on some of these just to mess around a bit. Now, I plan on actually trying out some really odd classes in the future in summits to see if I can still get in platinum and or get a good score on those and see how they may compete against some of the better sets there. Like the rally raid's basically going to be the king. I noticed even on the regular ones, a lot of players are running those on like these racetracks and all that, because you really can't go wrong with a set perk of 89%. But let me know what you guys think about the score breaker set on the drift vehicles, because I have to admit this is pretty dang fun to use. Even though it really isn't going to be the best option for summits, I still may have to try that out in the future. I'm also planning on taking a closer look at the score breaker set on the drag vehicles, because I feel like that might actually be useful in some ways as well.